Hey everyone, this is George Soto and you're watching Startups Unedited. Hey everyone, this is George Soto with Soto Ventures. Hope all is well. Today I'm super excited to be joined by Sean Sheppard, who, Sean, by the way, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Good morning. How's everything?
It's great, man. How are you doing?
Good, good. It's been a while since I've seen you. We should catch up in person soon.
We should.
Well, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your background? You've done some phenomenal things for the startup community, sales community, SaaS community in Silicon Valley. Love to hear a little bit about what you're up to as well these days.
Sure. Serial entrepreneur, close to 20 years as a selling founder, co-founder, or first or early hire, and in tech sales organizations. I've had 3 wins and 2 valuable learning experiences during my career.
I love that, valuable learning experiences, totally.
Yeah, I don't know how else to say it. Sometimes if you don't laugh, you'll cry. So I bias towards laughing. More recently, I partnered up with Will Bunker, the founder of Match.com, and Andrew Goldner, the former publisher of Reuters and chief technology counsel at DoubleClick. And we launched a seed stage venture capital fund and a market development accelerator program. So it's a $50 million seed stage fund. We work with companies that have early indicators of product market fit, early customers, early revenue, great product focused people. But unlike most accelerators who focus on helping companies develop product and raise money, we're focused on the stage where they need to market product and make money.
Awesome. And I think that, from what I remember, you were building a fantastic program at Tradecraft. Were there some of the things that sort of, you were focused on there that you were able to transition and then sort of fuse it with the capital piece as well?
Yeah, well, I went to Tradecraft to try out my curriculum for a startup MBA program that I developed back in 2006, and was thinking about at that time launching a sales college a month after Lehman Brothers crashed. So I decided to shelve it for obvious reasons, and dusted it off and reapplied it to the startup community after exiting my last company. And that's where I met Will and Andrew, and we saw this opportunity together to invest in seed stage companies that lacked help on the sales and marketing side. Once again, we see a lot of great product focused founders, but very few of them have knowledge and experience in getting to product market fit in the most capital efficient way possible. So while your products and your markets are unique, the path to product market fit is not. The same series of steps need to happen, and we've developed a methodology to do that as efficiently as possible and get to the truth faster than you may otherwise be able to get to it on your own.
Awesome. What would you say are the characteristics of a successful seed stage startup? Let's say a seed stage startup within SaaS.
Well, the first thing everyone has to recognize is that they don't know what they don't know yet, and that products don't create value, customers do. So the first and foremost, the number one characteristic between when you think about startups in the terms of product, team, and market wins every time. It's sort of like a piece of real estate. Your house is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. You can look online all day long at what you think the value is or what an appraiser might come in at. And I know this doesn't resonate very well in San Francisco, where the real estate prices continue to go up. But in other markets, that's not always the case. So your product is only worth what someone is willing to pay for it. And that's the ultimate true measure of whether or not you've created value. So that's the first thing. The second thing is does the team is the team humble and hungry enough to be a functional learning organization? Can they create a product market feedback loop to accelerate learning and recognize that they're taking an incomplete product to market, And their goal is to find innovators and then who will give them product feedback, and then early adopters who will have budget and see a competitive advantage in using their product to help them build a more whole and complete product that they could then take to the mainstream marketplace. So those are the characteristics of the product, the team, and the market that we see most often as being successful. In terms of the characteristics of the individuals, they need to be able to embrace ambiguity. They need to be able to listen. They need to be able to act quickly, and they need to be able to have a bootstrapping mentality. The biggest problem we see at seed stage is capital inefficiency. You can learn without spending a lot of money, and recognize that the seed stage is for learning.
Now, do you think that you should be, well, I guess, how concerned should you be with the competitive environment at that stage when you're still trying to figure out product market fit? I see a lot of folks get into this kind of process where they're looking at, direct or indirect competitors, and they're doing these like, hey, we have to have these features too, me too type stuff. Like, what's the balance between this is what the competitors or the market is providing, and we should have some of these comparable features, versus, hey, let's just really kind of do 10x these features. Let's really innovate. What's that balance, especially in B2B, where it's not a consumer transaction, where you can have a great sales process that can really sell, value propositions and, all these sorts of things. So what is that balance?
So there's two ways to look at this. There's the tactical way and the practical way. Tactically, you need to understand the job, pain, and gain associated with what your customers are currently doing today and the tools they're using to do that. And if those tools are competitive tools, then sure, you need to look at that, but you need to look at it through the prism of your customer. How are you different? What makes you unique relative to those other products? How can you either evolve or innovate over what they're doing? So that's number one. But do that through the eyes of the customer, not through your own. The second one is, the famous basketball coach, and maybe at this point, the winningest basketball coach in the history of the sport, was John Wooden, head coach of UCLA, and won, whatever it was, 10 championships in 8 and 10 years, and, hadn't lost a game in like 3 years. He never scouted the opponent. He only focused on execution of his own team. So there's that piece of this as well. What's really easy to do is to roam off and get distracted with FOMO, the fear of missing out, or this idea that some other product is better, or you need this because they need that. Don't assume anything except responsibility for your own actions. Number one, hypothesize whether or not that stuff matters, and ask the questions of your customers. Don't assume that you need it just because somebody else has it.
Well, what's the balance between, let's say you have your first 10 or 20 beta customers, right? And they're all asking you for features because they are seeing value, and you're being able to communicate, the pain point that you're solving well, etc. And then next thing you know, you have a list of 50 features, okay, which are like, reasonable features. They're not really that innovative at all. They're just kind of like the requirement checkbox type stuff. Versus, so you have that versus, that there are some innovative features that you and your team have been thinking about that really get you excited, and you really understand are the kind of 10x innovative features. How do you start as a founder and at that product market fit sort of discovery step? How do you balance, like, hey, here are the features that we need because the customers or these early customers are requesting, but then here are these other features that we know are really powerful. I know Steve Jobs said, and I don't remember the exact quote, but he was essentially saying, hey, your users don't actually always know what they need. And so, let's provide them with these innovative sort of features. What is that balance? How do you know what to focus on?
Great question. What Steve said is people don't know what you want until you give it to them. And it's one of the most dangerous things that's ever been said, especially to young founders that haven't been through it before. People don't remember. I'm old enough at 43 years old, having been born and raised in this area, to have seen him almost killed that company on 2 separate occasions with that attitude. So I don't buy that attitude. I don't believe in it. I think that it's an outlier. So that's number one. The second thing is, there's 2 ways to think about it. Number one, do you believe that your customers create value or your product? And if you believe, once again, that your customers create value and the product doesn't, follow the customer. Secondly, it becomes a resource issue. So practically, when you think about how much money do you have, how many people do you have on your team, how are you allocating those resources, and what expectations have you set with your investor community? If you say you've got some sort of game-changing technology, that means that it's going to take X amount of time and this many resources for us to get this product to a certain place where it truly is a game changer, right? If it's an Airbnb or it's an Uber or it's a Dropbox or it's something that is so fundamentally transformative, then you better raise enough money to execute on that. And that's okay, as long as you know that going in, right? Sometimes you just need enough money to validate that that's a thing and that you've got those early customers that believe and will say definitively, yes, this is transformative, and if you do X, Y, and Z, we will buy it, we will use it, right? So there's a balance to be played there. If you don't have the resources, build what your customers want and are willing to pay for. And then the only risk becomes, are there more people that want what that person or that group of customers wants? It's not the risk of, will anybody want it, which is the transformative risk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I think I'm hearing is, really build based on customer feedback and nail it for them. And then it's a matter of, hey, what's my total addressable market for these types of users or organizations?
Yeah, you have to construct a hypothesis that, look, if I build this for this group of customers, there is X amount of other customers in that addressable market that will want something similar or hopefully the same thing. But we have to take a market-first approach. And I love all of our product-focused founders. What makes them wonderful at what they do, the determination, the stick-to-itiveness, and the ardent belief in what they're doing, and the vision that they have is what drives them to get to an MVP. And that's great. But that's not what creates the ultimate value in the marketplace. The marketplace does. Mm-hmm. So you have to think from the market backwards. Find those early customers who are willing to devote their time and resources in giving you the feedback necessary to build a product that you hypothesize will deliver value to a similar segment of the community, and that's the market milestone. Now, if that's not the case, and you can convince others that what you're doing is truly transformative, therefore you need more time and money and resources, and you can just ignore those 50 features that you just called out and focus on the ones that you say are truly visionary and game-changing, that's great. But that's not always the case. In fact, most often it's not. George, did I lose you?
Hey,
buddy.
Hey, lost. I think we're still rolling. All right, back on. My internet cut out there.
No worries.
All right. So you were saying, I think the last component you were saying was, driving allowing the market to really dictate where you should be going, as opposed to, just and how great product founders were, but that gets you to an MVP, but it doesn't.
Yeah, at some point you got to start talking to humans, right?
Yeah.
And you need to decide whether or not those humans, who are the ones that are going to give you an economically viable business, if their priorities are aligned with your priorities.
Yeah.
And my experience, again, in most cases, is that if you build what people want, and a small group of those people will pay for it, now the risk becomes, are there more like them? Are there enough like them for me to build a viable, scalable business?
Now, speaking of investment, what's the current state of the seed stage, angel stage investment environment?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you bring that up. We talk about this a lot. The seed stage is the new A round. The traction requirements of the seed stage are getting closer and closer to the old A round requirements. The first time I raised money in '99, I raised $8.5 million just to get to MVP. I can build that same product today for about $250,000. So because the infrastructure and the tools are in place, it's a lot cheaper to learn. And as a result, there's more money being spread across more companies in smaller amounts to get to MVP and to get to whether or not there are traction milestones that need to be met. So it's easier for us to, well, I don't want to say easier. That's not the right word. It's less expensive to learn than it's ever been. So what investors want to see, especially even at the seed stage now, is what the old A-round guys would want to see, which is show me traction, show me revenue, show me early customers, show me a path to product market fit, show me a path to an investable CAC LTV ratio that scales. Show me that you know how to learn and do that. That's what people want to see. So it's changed in that regard.
So, I had a question because, I talk to a lot of founders about, their first fundraising, whether it's angel or seed, whether it's institutional or just independent investors. What does a successful first, round look like? Like, from I know it's hard to, maybe speak to in too many details because there is some very, customized or subjective opinions. But what does the cap table look like? How much should you be giving away? Especially it's like you and a co-founder or two or three, and you just need to be able to raise a little money to, keep the servers up and, and those sorts of things, not even pay yourself, but it's really more infrastructure costs. What does that look like? What does the composition of that first round look like?
Well, I would say, functionally, if you think about the long view, it's the old 50-30-20 model still applies. You want to reserve 50% of the company for the founders, the founding team, 30% for the investor community, and 20% for the option employee pool over time. At the seed or angel round, some of it's values driven, depends on who the people are, but from our view, raise as little as you need to be comfortably focused on achieving your next market milestone, whatever that is. Because as former founders ourselves, we're founder focused. We believe that if we do and help founders do what's in their best interest, that will be in everyone's best interests, and make sure that cap table stays clean for future investment and opportunity. So, you can do a safe note, you can do a convertible note. You might depending on where you are, you might be able to do a priced round, although we advise against it. As a fund where more than half of our investments are outside of Silicon Valley, we advise Middle America and the rest of the world to incorporate as a C corporation so they can take venture capital if they need it, not just LLCs. We see it's a real problem. We see a lot of, and it's understandable, but we see a lot of startups in other communities form as LLCs because their friends and family investors and high net worth people want pass-through losses as long as they can get them. Eventually, if they go for institutional money, that has to change. They end up having to convert, which is costly and sometimes a political pain in the ass with their investor community.
Now, if I am a founder out there interested in getting in touch with you or applying to GrowthX, how should I go about getting in contact with you? Are there some prerequisites that I have to be, sort of that I have to have in place? And who is that ideal founder that you guys are looking for at this point?
Sure. Well, I think I alluded to some of the characteristics earlier. We love humble, hungry, product-focused founders that recognize they don't know what they don't know yet about the market side of their business. They have a bootstrapping mentality, and they're more interested in our help than our money. They can go to growthx.com, read more about us and our community of founders, and reach us there. We view help as our due diligence, so we try to be accessible, we try to be transparent, and we try to give legitimate reasons when we pass. We just don't disappear into the woodwork because we've all been there, and that's our attitude. And our goal is to we don't think founders should have to come to the Valley to raise money or be close to their capitalists. They need to be close to their customers and focused on that. So we're expanding. We've got offices now in Nashville, Dallas, and Phoenix, which are 3 great markets for reasonable valuations and founders that want to stay home and build their company and build out their own ecosystem and contribute to that. And we're going to do the same thing in other markets around the globe as we grow as well.
Fantastic. Sean, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If folks want to follow you on social media, what's your Twitter handle? Are you on LinkedIn? I know personally you are.
Yeah, I was one of the first 10,000 guys on LinkedIn and girls. But at Sean A. Sheppard, S-E-A-N, my middle initial A, last name Sheppard, S-H-E-P-P-A-R-D is my Twitter handle. I'm there. I blog regularly for GrowthX Media as well as Sales Hacker and some others. And we were again recently featured in Forbes last week for our new investment approach. So I'm out there. I'm constantly making noise and having fun and doing workshops and talks and whatever I can do to help the startup community and build the ecosystem.
Awesome. Well, Sean, thank you again for joining us this morning. Really, really appreciate it. Hope to see you in person soon and catch up. I'm really excited about what you're doing and love to be as supportive as possible.
Thanks, George. The feeling's mutual, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too, buddy.